Got a friend in Santiago, got a friend in Berlin, got a friend 100 miles away, who's as close as my hand. Distance couldn't keep us apart because we're one man with one heart.
You're watching Cobb TV. This is the Inner Stream, and this is our new time slot, Sunday at 11 o'clock. We're moving the shells around so you can pick up a shell and see under which one is the thing you seek. So try picking up the shell for the Inner Stream at 11 o'clock on Sundays. You know, there's an interesting article in the news, and I saw it yesterday. It really tweaked my interest. This is the news that you find in newspapers. But you find that when you learn Kabbalah and you look at how nature works, you find that what you see in the papers is really a reflection of some other thing, what we call news. Some of it is completely total nonsense. Some of it must, because we live in a world governed by a general law, must reflect things that are actually going on in some other, let's call it, dimension. And tonight we're going to look a little bit at that relationship between what dimension and what we see here as a result of that law, what we understand about it, what we can connect with it, how we can and can't connect to it, and how that makes up a huge part of the human condition. In the Globe and Mail, which is a national newspaper in Canada, there's a story called, it was a front page story yesterday, called Endless Summer. And it's a description about what's going on around the globe in terms of temperature. And it says that around the globe, this week, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that's an interesting name, revealed that the Earth is on course for the hottest year since record-keeping began, and that's 1880, which is not that long ago. And it says that there is the sweltering outcome of a bizarre confluence of abnormal weather. Certain forces are working here. It's been swirling about the globe for months, and in the process, it's parched Thai crops, it's melted German roads, it thwarted Canadian military operations, and it's causing huge changes all over the world in terms of climate. And in Canada, the temperatures from January onwards have been almost 4 degrees above average. 4 degrees above average. That's huge. It shattered the previous record of a little bit more than 3 degrees in 2006. So it seems to be part of something that's starting to happen and continuing to happen. But what's different about this story is that it's not localized. A lot of the U.S. has been cooking in the last month, and the same phenomenon is happening in Russia and in Europe. And the experts in this article, they say what's causing it is difficult to answer. And there's an unpronounceable name, I'm sorry, who is a meteorologist with the University of Hawaii. He said that warming has been on a very large spatial scale, and it's been persisting for months. So it goes way beyond local conditions. It is on a large spatial scale. That is, it's global. Even though if you look at it, it seems to be happening and accountable, say, by looking at some local weather forces or geographic conditions and currents and so on. But what they can't figure out is why every one of these areas where you could account for things with the local influences are getting the same result. And all the local influences are a bit different. So here we are trying to understand what forces are working on us that could be causing all of these things. There are theories, but I'm saying that this article is interesting because the meteorologists themselves are saying, look, let's not jump here. It's not clear why these things are happening all at once. Normally, and all at once and all over the place. Normally, scientists jump in there and they say, well, you know, it's this and it's this and it's this. And all they're saying in this article is there's a confluence of forces. What it brings into question, and what is really worth questioning, is what is it that we define as forces? And how do we get to a point where we can understand how they work on us, where they're derived from, and what can we do about them? Is there something that we can do? Is man really affecting the climate the way that the environmentalists are saying? I guess there's really no question that there is an influence of man, but what is it? And where does that influence lie? Does it lie when we're doing things, throwing away cans or throwing aerosols into the air, and all of the waste that we create, and the spills and the sort of man-made disasters? How does that account for this effect that is total and global? How do we understand what these forces are?
It takes a baby to read the Zohar. As babies, our powers were limited to crying for food and taking a serious nap afterwards. Pretty soon the grown-ups showed us how to crawl, walk, talk, and live life. Now we know it all and can relax for a change. But to know anything of the hidden 99% of reality, we have to begin again, using the Zohar as a blueprint of the spiritual world we want to grow up in. Even barely comprehending, trying to feel that its characters and stories happen within my desires, I gradually identify our spiritual anatomy and begin walking, talking, and living within that structure. That's how we come to feel how the Zohar embroiders all reality, and become grown-ups there, and then we really will know it all. The end.
The beginning of understanding where we are and what forces are working on us comes with something that the Kabbalists have left for us. The recent Kabbalists, the Kabbalists of the 20th century, one in particular, Rabbi Yehuda Ashlag, who is a great Kabbalist. Rabbi means great, and it means it has something to do with the attainment of a person. Besides what his profession was, as a Kabbalist, it simply means one who has the ability to convey this a means of entrance to these forces that actually exist inside of us. And what he gave us was an explanation of something that was not apparent at all for thousands of years, and that is that the information that's been left to us by those, let's call them spiritual physicists, spiritual scientists, the Kabbalists, who actually were able to understand and, we'll say, attain, enter a level of understanding of the forces that govern our life, human life. He told us that there is a special language, and that the universe, that is our existence, life itself, is constructed in such a way that there is a way to understand it if we look at how nature speaks to us. And he says that the Kabbalists reflect this, and it's called the language of branches. that there is a root, there is a level, a causal level. And it's made up of forces, but they're called spiritual forces. Not the kind of, angels and devils type of spiritual, but that a higher dimension that we are engaged with and that certainly affects us, but we don't have access to it because we live on the secondary level, which is called the branch level. Now, this branch level is what appears in this world. It's the outcome of all the things that we're trying to understand. When we look at the weather, we're trying to understand, well, what sort of physical thing happened that made this thing happen, and what actions are we taking that's making the kind of effect that we've got. What the Kabbalists tell us is that there actually is a kind of force that has to do very much with human effect. Everything that we're seeing is being caused by that effect. However, we have no conscious connection to it. And so let's just take it down a little bit from the Kabbalistic level and look at it from the point of view of the scientist. The scientist wants to understand what other dimensions are, because in that sort of intellectual grasp of other dimensions, there's this sense that maybe we could understand, direct, and control nature. Now, the Richard Dawkins Institute, and Richard Dawkins is he's a sort of a social critic, particularly on religion, and he's a real rationalist, and he has an institute that supports the development of rationally. It promotes humans looking at their situation in a rational way, and along with others who make these kinds of social critiques, he produces materials that will influence us to look at things in another way. Let's look at how this sort of critical mind and the approach of the critical mind looks at this question of other dimensions.
When confronted with this strange idea of more than left, right, back, forth, and up, down, is, well, we immediately see those three dimensions, why don't we see the others? And this is a real puzzle, it's a real problem that people have come up with very interesting and creative solutions for. If the math of your theory is suggesting more dimensions, but you don't see them, where are they hiding? And one of the places that they may be hiding is in plain sight. It may be that those other dimensions are all around us, just like the three that we know about, but they're tightly curled up to a very, very small size. So tiny that we can't see it with the naked eye or even with our most powerful equipment to date. And often people get a little confused. What do you mean by a small curled up dimension? And all I mean by that is, if you're a little tiny ant and you're walking along one of these tiny dimensions, you circle around back to your starting point very quickly. You can't go very far in that dimension because it curls back in on itself, like a sphere or like a little tiny circle. And you go around it and you come back to your starting point. And if that circle or that sphere is so tiny that we don't have the visual acuity to pick it out, those dimensions can be all around us and yet be invisible. So according to these ideas, if I take my hand and I sweep it in front of my face, I wouldn't just be moving in the obvious dimensions that we can all see with the naked eye. I'd also be, in some sense, moving around those other tiny dimensions. I'd just be returning to my starting point over and over again so quickly that on average, I wouldn't even have recognized that I took the journey at all.
So there is a theory, a rational theory about what a higher dimension is, or the fact that, well, if other dimensions exist, which of course you'd have to think there has to be something above, things exist within something, within a framework. If there are forces that act on us and we don't understand them, we don't see where they're coming from, then obviously there has to be some other dimension or some aspect that we don't see. This is true. But the explanation According to the Kabbalists, it's true. I'm not speaking about like I'm saying it's true. I'm reporting that another group of rationalists who have already gone beyond this sort of projection of theory tell us precisely where that is that we can't see. Because to begin with, in the root and branch structure of things, it is impossible, totally impossible, to understand the root level, which is the higher dimensional level, from the branch level. Totally impossible. Because the branch level is done. It's the outcome. It's fixed. No innovation. No creation. What Solomon says is there is nothing new under the sun. In other words, once it has gone from the higher dimension, the effect, whatever that force is, into the lower one, from there nothing can be perceived unless a person can sense things from the root level. One has to find a method of getting to that higher level. It's hidden from us, the Kabbalists tell us, because we're overlooking something that just is not on the table for science at all. And yet it's somewhat ridiculous that it isn't, because it figures completely into our experience. And it's discounted except in the sense that they say, well, when somebody does an experiment, there's some sort of an effect based on the person who did the experiment. We all know this. It's, you know, it's almost slang now, you know. But all that means is that there is a connection between... We see things outside of ourselves. And there's also things that we feel inside of ourselves. And these two things flow one to the other. They're connected. It's not like you can take all of that inner life of a person away and say that that's reality out there. Everybody knows that human experience is the mingling of these two aspects, the inner aspect and what we supposedly see outside of ourselves. The fact that we don't see these things is because we don't take that thing into account. What the Kabbalists tell us is that higher dimensions are not more and more convoluted or tucked in aspects of time and space, physicality, physics, laws of physics. They are realms of emotion and thought. So if we don't take that into account, we say, well, there's nothing there. But of course, there is something there. And the higher dimensions are dimensions of one of two things. It is either a quality of a desire to bestow, to give, or a quality of a desire to receive. The interplay of these two things, they tell us, causes a sensation, and the more different, and the lower level is this level of wanting to receive for ourselves. The upper level is a level of wanting to bestow, which is how nature works. Now, the difference between these two causes an interaction. On the unconscious, uneducated level, that is somebody who does not know the method, the structure of nature, and the method of attaining this higher quality, we feel that interplay as emotions. The emotions are actually us not recognizing that we feel separated, alone, disconnected from this higher force. The amount that we feel separated, disconnected, and the force of the emotion comes from the amount of difference that we feel, you know? And so in this interplay, this force of emotion, this inner life of a person, it's all being derived from a ratio inside the person of wanting to take and wanting to give. And these are like total things. This is not just, I'll give a little, I'll take a little. This is like, these are forces. These are things that impel all action. Now, the only way that a person can understand these upper forces is to rise to the level of those forces. But you don't do it theoretically. You don't do it by trying to understand the root from the branch. It must be done by a technique. And there is a technique, and the technique is contained inside of a book called the Zohar. It's a book which explains how to transform our basic need, desire to receive everything for ourselves, which blinds us to the dimensions that surround us. It shows us that hide from us the fact that we are guided constantly in every way by a totally loving force. These emotions that we feel when we're unconscious, they impel us to develop. They're telling us to develop. But until we wake up, until we seriously ask that question about why are these things happening and what is that force, we can't understand that these effects that are happening in the world, globally, all over the world, we're getting this effect of heating up. Things are firing up. It's coming from human waste. But it's not physical waste. It is the unawakened, non-responsive dragging of our desire against making an interchange that is absolutely necessary. This, if we could enter it, if we learned the method of being able to see what these emotions, this inner life of ours is really telling us to do, how to change it, what to do, and how to interact with others, and then therefore putting a completely different effect from the root level down to the branch level. Until we do that, all we have is our desire to do that, and or at least for things to change, or all we can do is ask why. But if we're not serious about the question, there's not a lot that we can do. All we really can do is put an effort in. I've got an effort that doesn't actually go anywhere. The point is to act. If you have the question, then seek the answer. If it's a real question, why don't you take seriously the search for that thing? You know, the Zohar seems like something very, very strange, but there are many people all over the world now who ask this question in a very serious way. And they are actually taking steps to learn this process that's there, that is meant for all people. It's meant for this point of transition. And I'd like to share with you something that Dr. Michael Lightman said at Zohar Convention in Israel just a few months ago, where there were, I believe, 6,000 or 7,000 people gathered just to sit and learn about the Zohar.
This is our festival. I'm speechless because I never thought this would happen. I came to the Rabash, and when I was told by people that Baal Sulam's dream, that something like this could happen, I didn't believe it. Because a person dreams that these books would be opened, these books that no one needs, these books that people are even afraid of. They think that it's these forces, scary forces that are in it. And when I was told that you'll see in 1995, I asked the Rabash, and he said, yes. 50 years ago, Baal Sulam said that in 50 years it will happen. So I said, yeah, people always say in another 50 years. And he said, no. If a Kabbalah says in 50 years, then he feels that he knows he's telling you out of the fact that he has no time. And it truly started being revealed, the wisdom. But I understood then that the Zohar is still far. Also now we can see that there are those people that it scares them away. That when you speak about the logics, the structure of the world, the sefirot, freedom of choice, the ego, evil inclination, all that's logical. It all relates to science, psychology. It's somewhat clear from our lives, and even more so, they see it as a great wisdom, an ancient wisdom that has a great base on something, and maybe it's from above. But you can see that its roots in this world, and you can see that it's correct. But when they open the Zohar, they see nothing. And that is the person's true test. Does he understand that there's no choice and he must break into the spiritual world? And this is how it's done. Through this barrier, as if it's virtual, that you can't do anything past it. Don't you feel now what force there is between you, what special connection, a revelation, a little more and it will burst out. And here the Zohar needs to help us.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the Zohar, is that it reflects the system, the entire law. It's not a book, it's a law. It's just a way in which a person can inject themselves into it. A person doesn't see anything in the Zohar when they approach it with theoretical approaches. This is why he's mentioning, look at the connection, the sort of force of love and connection between you. Because this language it's not a language like the language that we speak. All language is an expression of sensation. When we try to tell somebody something, it is we are conveying something within us that somehow, seemingly magically, it is possible to convey that impression to another person. We get it. The thing exists. But the kinds of impression that we're trying to convey, they're branch impressions. Now, if a person wants to convey something of a higher nature that is very, very different, opposite to what we experience here, then it takes a completely different kind of sensitivity. A person has to put themselves into it and try to reach that quality, that force, that upper dimension that is simply made up of our similarity or dissimilarity of equivalence of form, the amount of equivalence of form with this law of nature. So this is a different sort of a process. And that's what the study is about. It's not about here. It's about something that happens inside of the heart when we really want this. And then these things really take on meaning with the proper question, in the proper setting, with correct guidance and preparation and learning of a process. There was a comment on Generation Z, which I loved, and Andrew answered it, and I would like to answer it as well, because there's something beautiful about it. And this is from a guy, KT in Winnipeg, I think it's Winnipeg, and he says, laughing out loud, reality bites, eh? Reality is with greed, F, and you can fill in the other three letters. All is going to get better if you can think happy Kabbalah thoughts. All you like, it won't change reality. You're exactly right. He's right. Happy thoughts are not going to change anything. It's the only thing that will change our inner nature is a method of actually changing it. And that method of human transformation, of changing what we desire, not the fact that we receive, but how we receive. That instead of receiving for ourselves, we do exactly the same branch level thing that doesn't change. But we do it in such a way that it has a similarity of form, an equivalence of form with that higher force of bestowal. If a person learns to do that, everything changes. If you think that it's just going to be a bunch of happy thoughts, well, that's like the lazy man's view. You're right. Nothing is going to change that way. And we've got, it's honest. It's good. We have a comment from Virginia Mary. That's a nice name. And she's saying that it's wonderful how even when we're being entertained, it's an education all of its own. Sweet. Thank you for that very warm thought. And there's a comment here from, it doesn't say from who, and it says, it is the heat of our love uniting, causing global warming. It's heating up. That's cool. And here's a question from Ralph from New Jersey. As a Learning Center student, I've continued my studies by viewing archived virtual Zohar preparation lessons. See, this guy is involved in trying to learn this process, and also participating in several live daily Zohar lessons. My question is, do you have any tips for stopping my logical mind from continually thinking of the corporeal meaning or our world meaning of the words when reading the Zohar along with the Rav and the group? This continually frustrates me, since I know that the Zohar speaks of inner sensations, qualities, degrees, and states in the upper world. I come to every lesson with a strong desire to connect with the group. He means to connect. See, the whole process is that the upper dimension is actually between people. So when he says to connect to the group, this is what he means. And he wants to truly feel the words of the Zohar, but my mind immediately gravitates towards the literal translation of the word in this world, not the upper world. I realize that I don't know how the word represents the upper world, but the literal meaning seems to put up a barrier to me feeling the true spiritual meaning. So he's looking for a tip. The tip is effort. That's it. You already are aiming at the right things, the connection to others, the working against wanting to see things in their physical form, which is only to see them as relating in a self-centered way. But we obviously aren't built that way, so you can't actually do it. And the effort, knowing that you are doing it against this impulse to see things as separated, to feel them as how does it affect me, and what do I get out of it, and is it talking about some kind of law? Am I evil? Is there, what's behind that corner there? Is it really telling me that I must do this and I can't do that, and I'm scared of this and I'm uplifted by that? You know you're fighting these things by which we measure good and bad here. You're fighting to have a completely different sense of truth as against falsehood. The fact that you know that and you're not succeeding, that doesn't matter. It really is basically an inward attack, meaning you have to go at it, just attack our own egoism over and over and over again until it clarifies. Because if this process was just something simple, it would have happened a long time ago. It's become a lot more simple because now we're doing it in a very large group of people sharing exactly the same desire. So we get tremendous help in that way. It's not dependent on our intellect. It's dependent on our connection. And all we have to do is attack our desire to stay separate. Cobb TV. Watch your life make sense.
3, 4. attack. Attack. All the friends attack. 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 All the friends attack. Attack. All the friends attack. Woo! Here we can work to give. Here we can work to give. Here we can work to give. Give. Here we can work to give. Here we can work to give. Here we can work to give. Give. Attack. All the friends attack. 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 All the friends attack. Attack. All the friends attack. Attack.
Join us right after this when we will learn a little bit about the difference between the way that we think, guided by bitter and sweet, that is, what I want for myself and what I don't want for myself, and the logic of the upper dimension, which is truth or false, after this.
When one looks into the human heart, we can see it is a collection of desires. From the basic necessities to the more complex social desires of wealth, honor, and knowledge. But there appears a point within every human heart that yearns for something different. It desires to know only one thing. What is the meaning of my life? Welcome to The Point.
So where were you born, Lori?
I was born in Montgomery, Alabama. My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around. We spent a lot of time in Europe, in Naples, but we moved every 3 years. So we were sort of on the go a lot.
So what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know. You know, when I started off in life, I didn't have a specific, this is when I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, I want to be that. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, in a lot of ways, I didn't know what I wanted to be. You know, sort of later in life, you know, then it started questioning what I wanted to do and what was I supposed to do. But there wasn't this, you know, real strong desire to do anything when I was younger, which I think brought me to a lot of questions even when I was young of why am I here? I remember even being like in 4th or 5th grade going, why is everything happening through my viewpoint? Is everybody else having the same viewpoint, or is it just me? Is the world revolving around me? Or, you know, I couldn't figure those questions out at a really young age. So, you know, so I had that question a lot of why am I here? Why does it seem like the world's happening in my movie?
Right.
Or is everybody else having a movie too? In a lot of ways, I saw it You know, it was painful in some ways, with struggling with dealing with life and dealing with people and dealing with relationships, because I didn't know, even though I saw myself as the director, I didn't know how to direct properly. Do you know? Like,
did you feel like you had difficulty communicating with
I
other
did.
people?
I had difficulty sometimes communicating, sometimes connecting, sometimes just understanding what people wanted from me, what was needed from me, their demands, and also, yeah. So and also not necessarily fitting in, not quite understanding what was being played out, and how I had a place in it at all. It's like I knew that I was sort of directing, or I had this film, but I didn't know how it worked. Even though I was directing the movie, I could see that there was this viewpoint for me, why certain times in my life it would be like a timer was set, or a jack in the box, that certain situations would happen in my life and I would just go on automatic. And there was no, I had no control over it. You know, I had absolutely no control of how I would react, how I would feel. It's like the emotions would start pouring. And so I did, you know, everything. I studied all these different religions, trying to figure out how to do that. Now, in most cases, I sort of figured out how to ride the wave to a certain degree, how to ride when it was cranked up and all the emotions would come of abandonment and loss and all those feelings.
Where were these feelings coming from of abandonment and loss?
They were just there. They were inside. I mean, it's like I had absolutely no control over.
So nothing in particular triggered those emotions?
Oh, well, yeah, outside circumstances did. You know, if I broke up with a boyfriend, or if my family got upset with me of what I did or what I was moving, you know, and I'd feel like people were leaving. You know, of course things would trigger it, but it's like I had, you know, I was sort of realizing that I had absolutely no control over so much. Even though I saw the world from my viewpoint, it wasn't like I was in control of this movie that was happening. I sort of went to sort of this back to the land kind of movement. When I was working as a beekeeper, and when I was working, sort of living very simply, there was some answers in how nature worked, and I saw it back then because there was a real sense that there was some harmony going on there. That when you got into nature where there wasn't so much influence, human influence into it, there was some incredible harmony. Whether it was working as a beekeeper and seeing the harmony of the hive, you know, or on a farm where all the different animals and, you know, influences, you know, the animals that sort of contribute to the making of the vegetables and the meats and all of that.
There's an entire cycle.
So there was definitely answers that I was looking for. And I knew that there were certain laws of nature that were set in stone, that this is how it works. But I didn't know how we fit in with that, how humans fit in with that. But I was definitely saw some harmony. It gave me comfort, and it was a place where I would continually go back and look and sort of figure that out. There was still questions of, okay, nature's working this way, but how do I fit into that? Mm-hmm. Am I supposed to become exactly like nature, like a plant or, you know, the animals? Or is there something, there's got to be something bigger. There's got to be something more. I was going through a divorce, and it was a very painful divorce, sort of letting go of a lot of the images that I had thought, you know, marriage and having a child should sort of lead in one direction.
Kind of like the ideal life.
Yeah, the ideal of what it should do. And honestly, I had was going through divorce, and my ex-husband was quite upset. And I had heard about another Kabbalah group about wearing red strings. So I wanted the red string to protect myself because I knew he was pretty upset with me. So I bought a red string and sort of dabbled in Kabbalah and some other groups. And that's when some of the wisdom sort of came through. And that's when I discovered B'nai Baruch. I think it answered the question that I had when I would go into nature, of how that force affects us, what my place is in it, and how it functions.
Did you feel finally that you could possibly connect or understand, communicate better with other people?
I think it did. I think I think it brought more clarity to this idea that I had as a child, that I was in this movie. And it brought more clarity of how this sort of movie or this world was being run. But the biggest part was, I don't know, I think it was when I met a lot of people within B'nai Baruch, connecting with our desires. It was something like I had never felt before. Do you know, it was a heart connection. It was not what you look like. It's not what you did. It wasn't your job. It wasn't, you know, living simply, eating organic, you know, working on what we thought spiritual progress was. It was a heart connection that that touched me the most, I think.
So how does that affect the way you see your movie now?
I think how it affects it is it brings some clarity that, number one, that there is a movie, that almost how I'm seeing the world or how my movie is being played out is how I'm feeling inside, or the qualities, or what's internal for me. So it's given me, you know, outside sometimes I used to think, well, how come that person's playing this way in the movie? How come that person's doing this in the movie? Why don't they stop doing this in my movie? You know, how can I get them to stop? Or how can I get them to, you know, go away, or certain people to come into the movie? I didn't know what everybody's purpose was. But I think now, through this study, is somehow I've gotten a bigger picture of why this movie's being played out. There's a sense of peace with it. There's a sense of knowing, you know, how the movie set runs, how things are happening, what I can do, what the rules of the game, you know, what the rules of it are.
Thank you so much, Lori, for coming in and telling us your story. It's incredible to have met you throughout this whole journey. It's great to hear so many stories about how you come to that point where you push and you push and you push and you finally get the answer.
The higher dimensions are dimensions of love. Not that, you know, sickening sweet idea that we have here of pleasure from affection that I receive. But the roots, the things that make the movie play out the way that it does, not only for me, but the entire world, those dimensions are dimensions of, the higher they are, the more caring they are, the more creative they are, the more influential they are. The greatest amount of bestowal has the greatest influence. That is, that it creates, it gives life, it provides all systems that support life. This is a quality. It is a feeling. It's what people call God. And the degree to which a person can learn to rise from this branch level where it's all just a movie and you don't know what the next scene is going to bring, or why any character is doing what they're doing, or why the set is the way that it is. Is it a disaster film? A disaster film? Is it an adventure? Is it a love story? We don't know why we have the set that we have. Every difference between our state of wanting to receive and its mixture with the desire to even want to desire to give, this is a higher and a higher and a higher and a higher state. It doesn't just happen. There's a method of using everything that exists here to rise to that level, and that is what we call Kabbalah, but it actually is the system provided to us by nature. So one more question here about the Zohar. From Dan, he said, I started listening to the first archived lessons of the Zohar that began in November of 2009 so that I could get Rav Lightman's beginning instructions for the approach to the Zohar. Am I better off viewing the Zohar lessons in this chronological order, or is it better to skip that approach and start viewing the present lessons? Well, I'm supposing that you have some kind of preparation, that perhaps you studied with the Learning Center, or you understand, at least from what you've seen already in these early lessons, about the correct approach. If you've already done that, then it's better to get in there and start relating with all of the other people all over the world who are doing the same thing. Go to the morning lesson or to the Zohar lessons that happen noon Eastern time, and do it with others. That's far more important once you know the approach than understanding anything, you know, so that's the thing to do. This, I started out by talking about the news of the world, but the real news is what flows through us from the root level to the branch level, and that's represented by what comes out in the morning lesson, because the morning lesson is sort of the pinnacle of human desire looking for a connection with this force in a conscious way. So from there enters into the world a flow, and this flow contains the spiritual and emotional weather of humanity, and everything that occurs during the day is really basically a reflection of that particular flow, that pulse in our development. So here is the pulse from the last lesson, and this deals directly with what we've been speaking about true and false compared to bitter and sweet.
We don't understand what does scrutiny of truth and false mean. We don't have the vessels for it. You feel that what I'm telling now is truth, then it's not truth, it's sweet. You understand that you're turning truth and false into bitter and sweet. This means that you have only a scrutiny of bitter and sweet. Your mind works corresponding to your donkey. That's exactly our world. And the truth and false that the Torah speaks about means that we acquire the attribute of binah that we don't have, and in it we examine that bestowal is truth, and then it has nothing to do with what's going on in the Malchut, whether we have something there or not. Thus, what is truth and false? We don't know. He asks, how do we acquire something like that? By the reforming light. We don't have such vessels at all. We don't even have a shred of that.
A person grows in such a way that at first he receives new desires and fulfillments which are necessary for his development and which work for his benefit. This is the direction given to him by nature, which desires to raise him and make him self-sufficient, the way children in our world grow. What we're adding is true versus false, in addition to sweet versus bitter, unlike children who only understand bitter and sweet. In order not to remain children for the rest of our lives, as it says, what to do with children who have grown old, we have to start acting according to the principle of true versus false.